Welcome to today's episode, a New Year's episode of Just Call Dad. We are going to dive in with my friend Josh Ballard. Habits is our focus for today. Every person in the new year wants to have the right set of habits, but how do you get there? That's something that Josh is going to help us understand and help me understand as we talk about what type of habits are we going to keep and what type of habits should we change in 2025. Josh, how are you today?
Good, Sean. How are you?
Doing well. Got some snow here in Ohio this morning when we woke up, so the kids are going to be excited.
Yeah, we got literally just hit full out. My wife was like, "Did you know that on Monday we're supposed to have like 5 inches of snow or something like that?" And I was like, "Man, like I've been waiting all December. It's usually like, oh, we want to have snow on Christmas, but yeah, my kids are going to be excited to go play in the sloppy snow, whatever it looks like this weekend."
Yeah, so are mine. I already got ready this morning. I kind of prepared. I had my first cup of morning coffee, just kind of standing and observing that. So that was fun.
Yep, I got mine right here.
Yeah, I'm on number two. I know that's not a great habit, so we could start off with that conversation.
Yeah, maybe we
Uh,
should talk about that.
Maybe we should have this conversation. No, I'm definitely working on that. I think coffee is a really good thing, but it's something we want to make sure we do in moderation, right?
Yeah, with anything.
With anything. So, all right, well let's just jump into a couple things that I have prepared. First of all, let's hear about this is Just Call Dad podcast. So let's talk about your dad life. We just talked a little bit about playing in the snow with our kids, but tell us about your family.
Yeah, so I've been married to my amazing wife Emily for the last 9 years, going on 10 years this year in June, which is exciting. High school sweethearts, and we always knew that we wanted to have a family. Early on in our relationship, we also talked about how do we serve kids that need help? How do we get maybe involved in adoption and all these things? So that'll come later in the story. So we always had this family mindset. And so in 2015, we got married, and I was in the military looking to settle down afterwards. I was like, you know what? If I really want to like settle down and put roots down somewhere, I don't want to be moving every 2 or 3 years. And so decided to get out. And in 2019 is when we had our son Jackson. He's now 6 years old, which is crazy. Like he's a kindergartner getting on the bus, and it's like such a wild thing. And then in 2021 we had our second son Judah, and then in the middle there, my wife and I for 2 years did foster care, and so we had three different teenagers come through our home and two different toddlers. And the toddlers we're not in communication with. They were unified back at home, which is the goal of foster care. And with the teenagers, we still have a relationship with them, which is really cool. And so now it's just us and the boys in the house, and we love to just go do stuff. They are like adventurers. We love to play. We love to go to trampoline parks. I mean, outside in the snow is going to be huge this winter. Just anything that we can do, go and do, is something that they love. And the cool thing about that is like they, and all kids are like this. They crave our attention. They like want connection with us so bad, and I think it's like a deep desire that everybody has, right? Like everybody craves connection at the end of the day, and your kids especially. And it's so cool to see like when I put the phone down, when I get down on their level, when I like make eye contact with them, when I'm super intentional about my time with them, what comes out of that. And so I've loved to dive into that for like the past couple of years. Like I came from a point where I was really unhealthy and got my life kind of back on track by some simple habits. And now it's so cool to see the fruit of that in my 6 and 3 year old and the way that they, run to me, the way that they look at me, the way they talk to me, unless they prefer mom, and then they're 100% running over to mom and they don't want anything to do with me. But it's really cool, and I love my family.
Josh, I like hearing stories about the guests and their family. One of the things I enjoy is the differences and similarities between our dad experience. So as I listen to you, I hear similarities, I hear differences in my own story. You see, we're a house of all daughters. And so we've had an experience where I've had to be out of my comfort zone sometimes to learn how to play with them. And it's been really good for me because you shared you were in the military, you kind of like to be a go getter, you like to get after it. But here's the thing, like sometimes for me, I'm the same way, but my daughters have slowed me down, and that's been really helpful. But in the same token, it's been really cool because they also like to play rough and they like to go outside. And so it's been fun. It's just exciting always when I talk to different dads and their experiences, whether they have sons or daughters or a mix of both, or even the foster experience that you shared. How amazing is that to take kids in and give them the opportunity to feel that home and that love that you guys your family brought. So when we have experiences as a dad, it's so interesting because this podcast just called Dad came from this idea of what will I do when my kids are grown, or better yet, when they're young and they call for me and they say, hey dad, or will I be the one they call when they're stuck and they need me? And as I talk about that mission behind this, people always get excited because everybody has that hey dad experience where someone is calling for you. And I want to talk about that for just a minute because you talked about habits, you talked about changing your habits, and you decided and you made a conscious choice to be dad. And you made a conscious choice not only to be dad, but to be a better version of you. And that is how, in my opinion, we become the dad that our kids can call on. So, some of those habits that you talked about, what do you do for yourself, not just the people you work with, but for yourself to make those changes? Is it drastic or is it gradual over time?
Yeah, so coming from playing football in high school, coming from and in college, and then also the military, like I tend to be very extreme in the way that I do things.
Yeah.
There's a book that I read, pretty common, Atomic Habits by James Clear, and the idea behind his book and kind of the idea that I've now adopted in my life is just kind of like getting 1% better every day and like changing the trajectory overall versus like some immediate big wins. So in the beginning, a couple years ago, once I decided to really be intentional about this, and kind of how it came about is like I was walking up the steps with he was 2 at the time, and I just got winded like halfway through, got all the way to the top, like laid him down to put his diaper on, and I was like legitimately out of breath, and it was a common thing for me. So like this time wasn't any different, but it was something about like the way that I looked at him and like saw his eyes, and I was like, man, like he deserves a dad that can breathe when he gets to the top of the steps. Like, and so for me, I did what I knew how to do at that time, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be super extreme. I did 75 hard, which is like, I don't know if you know anything about it. It's a crazy program. Like, there's all these non-negotiables you have to hit, and there's no exceptions. If you miss one of the things, you fail. You start back over on day one, and so that was like my life and what I had known. And so after I did 75 hard, I was like, what can I start to do in my daily life to really um, make change happen? Not just like be so focused on these big extreme outcomes, but really be focused on the journey and, 5, 10, 20 years from now where I can be. And so it's really simple things. Like, I don't do anything that I think is like super out of the ordinary. Um, I just do things with intent, and I track. I think tracking is one of the things that you have to do when you're looking at your habits and looking at changing your life. And so the biggest things that I really focus on is putting my phone down at like dinner time and family time at the end of the day. Like I have an app, it's called RO, that I use to like track all of that. And so literally what I do is I take my phone, and my kids know this now, and I put it in a box. My wife and I both do this now. And that just allows us to be more intentional as a family. Like the distractions of social media, the distractions of any notification is put away. And so that has just led to so much better conversation, better playtime, better engagement with the kids. That's probably been one of the best things that I have done for myself, and that I would encourage every dad to do, because I think a lot of times we get so tired throughout the day. Like, we're waking up early. Maybe we're trying to build a routine of working out early in the morning before the kids wake up, which is something that I've done before, and actually something that I'm starting again because I noticed how much it changes my life. Um, and so I forgot where I was going with that.
I like it. Let's talk about that real quick.
But
Let's jump in
yeah,
because I really like what you said, and I don't want our listeners to miss what you said. So, what I love about, first of all, there's like two things that I think stick out to me. So let's talk about it. The very first thing
yeah,
is you were extreme when you started, and I think a lot of dads specifically, I'm the same way. I go way too hard at what I want to change because I see all the things I need to fix and I need it like right away because I don't want to struggle. And I think we're afraid of struggling, but we're also afraid of being content. I think it's a weird dichotomy of like this idea of like, am I okay with being content? Am I not? And so we go after things, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, whether it's a 75 hard challenge or other challenges. I think some people need that. I think they need that level, but I think some people are wired so much that if they give all of that to that kind of challenge, they almost do the opposite to themselves and they create anxiety. That's me. I create anxiety, I create worry. I don't get the benefit of the habit. Instead, I get the negative side effects of it, which is like if I don't do this, then I won't be this. And so I think that's the first thing is like if you're listening to this, it might be a more gradual change than you even realize. Don't miss the markers like walking up the steps out of breath. For me, it was panic, it was worry, it was anxiety that was like panging off my brain all the time. Just I didn't even realize it. And then I had to like kind of come to grips with that. Like I got to a breaking point. So I don't know. It might be different things for different people. It could be physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, whatever it is. The other thing I would talk about is the last thing you were just talking about is what is your routine, right? So like you have to know what works for you. I used to be this like let me get up at 4 a.m. and work out at 4:30 a.m. kind of person, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it almost became a bad habit, as weird as that sounds too, because I was obsessing over it. So I think maybe if we could just I think elaborate in the habits and continue to dig deeper into this, like I think we specifically as dads need to hear, okay, maybe have the grace for today to say, all right, there's small habit changes I can make. And yes, it's okay to get up early. Yes, it's okay to work out hard, all of these things, but not all at once. So maybe that's where we could just elaborate a little more. If I'm a dad and I'm doing, let's do a couple scenarios. I'm a dad and I'm doing decent. What could I do just small change starting today that could help me become great?
yeah. I think the biggest thing is looking at identity, and that's one of the ideas that I loved about Atomic Habits. Is like you have the outcomes, and Let's talk about 75 hard, for example. You have the outcomes, you have the process, and then you have the identity. The identity of 75 hard, like at the end of that, is maybe you're like super extreme, go all out, super committed to your fitness goals and wanting to really build mental toughness. Obviously, the process behind that is like the non negotiable daily habits that they have. And then there's like the outcome. The outcome of that is like completing 75 hard. And so many people focus on the outcome level. And so for dads that are out there that are would say that they're doing well, maybe they struggle with this same like extremism that I have kind of come out of. You have to really focus on identity first. That's how you make meaningful change that's actually going to last. I think a lot of times as dads, we like seek something, kind of like you talked about. We seek this thing. Maybe it's really extreme, and we're like, you know what? I'm going after it. And what happens in that, maybe we do get to a healthier version of ourselves. Maybe we are more ripped than ever before. Maybe we lost like 50 pounds. But at the end of the day, what's your family connection look like? What's your relationship with your wife? What's your relationship with your kids? Like, are you able to tell them every single time that you go work out, hey, dad has to leave for 2 hours so that I can go to the gym because I need to work out to make myself better? What is that real like? Can you honestly say that at the end of the day that is going to make you a better person and a better dad? If it does, great. Like if that's you and that's who you want to be, I think that's totally fine. But I think for 80%, 90% of dads, you can't justify a 2 hour gym visit every single day, especially when it's being apart from your kids. And so you have to find what it is that you truly want to be. Like for me, for like the identity that I have kind of like built around myself is I want to be a dad who shows his kids how to lead, live, and love with purpose. And I want to do that confidently. And so almost everything that I do, I ask myself the question of, okay, is this in alignment with me showing my kids how to lead, live, and love with purpose? And if the answer is no, maybe there's some like internal battle that happens. But that is the best start that I would say. If you feel like you're doing okay, or if you feel like you're just overwhelmed, or you like don't know where to start, identity is the number one thing you have to start with. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what is my purpose? How can I find it? And if you don't know what your purpose is, you start to dive into what a future might look like for you, and breaking down some limiting beliefs that you might have about yourself, and then starting to really break through to the person that you want to become so that you can build habits and standards for your life that are in alignment with that.
So, shameless plug here. That's what a lot of my books are about that I write is purpose, because
There
I
you
felt
go.
like that was the most overused word that I always heard as an athlete, as an educator, and as a coach. I always said the word purpose and I never knew what it meant. So, I went on a 6 month journey to study the word purpose, and I wrote probably 5 books from that journey. And so, my first book that I wrote was from the experience that we had in the NICU. And those who listen to the podcast know that that's a big why behind starting Just Call Dad. Was when we were in that NICU, and I was writing as my like release, but also as my weapon against anxiety and worry and fear. Like I just picked up the pen, and that's how I started fighting. And so I think as dads, I think purpose is a hard thing because we don't really know what our purpose is. We can identify what the word means and we can point directly to things that are purposeful for us, but it's hard for us to identify purpose in terms of everyday life. And I think one of the main reasons that we have a roadblock there is because when we go through that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday grind of life, sometimes it's hard to find the joy in the small moments. And so I think if we can do something, and I talk about this in the book called Stop and Praise, it's a mentality that I've kind of formulated for myself to stop and praise more often. And that doesn't mean like you stop and you awkwardly praise people around you, but you stop and you observe a little bit and you praise at least one thing that you're noticing in your own life in that moment or in someone else's life. And I use this as an educator. It's actually one of my main teaching methods that I use is the stop and praise. And so every 5 minutes I want to stop and I want to praise something that I see. And I think if we can do that as dads in our own lives, if we could have a timer, an internal clock, or even a real clock to stop and praise some of the things that we're doing well, I think we would stick to our habits more frequently. So, one of the things that I want to kind of elaborate on here is as you've gone through this own personal journey that you have, right? You've experienced the low, you've experienced the need to be there for a call away. But what now have you done with that experience to try to help others? How can we, right? We have a dad that's doing okay. We have a dad that might be doing really bad and doesn't even realize it. Or we have a dad that's doing really well but has fear of the future of what's going to happen if this happens. How can we or how can you be someone who comes alongside another person no matter where they're at? How would they be able to go through that process with you? Could you walk us through that together?
Yeah. And that's one of the cool things about what I do. I just recently through all of my journey and through all of this, I became a certified health and life coach. And what I noticed is when dads are struggling, they struggle alone. And like we sit in silence. Like we let things internally bubble up, and we have these battles constantly inside. Like everything is internal, and we've been almost conditioned to think that it's not masculine to talk about the things that you're going through. Like think about how many times growing up, and if I played sports, so it was like if something bad happened, it's like dust it off. For like don't worry about that. Why are you sad? Why are you crying? Why are you like you don't need to worry about any of those things. Like you just need to focus on winning. You just need to focus on getting hit. And it's like, man, so all of my life, and I'm 33 now, and I really just probably over the past 3 years started learning emotions. I think kids bring that out of you. And the cool thing is, I have built a community for dads for this reason. We focus on tracking habits. I mean, we focus on intentional playtime with our kids, getting daily movement in, getting some high energy foods in, just making sure that we're, throughout our day, being intentional about our kids and our families, but also being intentional about us and our time and the things that we need. And it doesn't have to be like I talked about 2 hours in the gym. It can be like you go outside and you do some push-ups or burpees or whatever it might be for you. And I've built this community because I saw that struggle, I saw that need, and it's completely free. The community I have is completely free. Any dad can join. Any dad that feels like they're struggling, feels like they're doing well, is somewhere in the middle, you can join the community. And the cool thing about it is there's built-in support and accountability, because right now I have 30 other dads in there that are all experiencing that same thing. And so when you're in the highs, when you're in the lows, you share. It encourages people. Like when you're high, you can help encourage others, and when you're low, you can find support from others. And that's what's so cool about community. But we do weekly group coaching in there, again, 100% free. And I have paid options to work one on one and things like that. I don't even like to start with that because I like to really get to know somebody. And so I would invite any dad listening to this and any dad that I come in contact with to join the community, get involved, get active. And, if there's big struggles that you're having, I'm always available inside of there. And so, I take the messages all the time. I take like 15, 20-minute phone calls all the time. But the main thing that I want to focus on in this is just community, that we're doing it together. And that's what I love, Sean, about what you're doing, is that you're building a network of all of these different people, all of these different dads that can support each other. And I have always loved that. And I think that comes from being on teams growing up, like having teams of support, everybody kind of having different roles, watching the way that coaches interacted with the players, like all of this stuff is kind of like themed throughout my life. And it's so cool for me to like now see going from a point of like kind of craving that and missing that coming out of the military and out of the sports, like, and even in my job, like I work in IT, a lot of times like it's not very team oriented. It's like I got my stuff I work on, you work on your stuff, and maybe we'll talk throughout the day, maybe not. But I like just like I talked about earlier, I crave connection, and I think that's something that you kind of help people connect. You help people network and bring people together. Again, that's what I love. And so it's so cool for me to now be in a point in my life where I have seen all of the events leading up to where I am now, and now being able to be that coach that's kind of building a team of dads inside of my community, but also being a part of like a greater network of dads that are all doing amazing things. You're muted.
That was so good. My internet cut
Yeah.
out and I was like
Oh,
like
no.
so excited. I was like, this is the best ever, and then it cut out. I'll tell you what, real quick sidebar. Every time the internet or the technology doesn't work, it's usually a sign that we're doing something really, really good. I'm serious.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. Okay. All right. So let me just jump in real quick because what you said
Yeah.
is big time. And so first of all, thank you. Second of all, thank you. And obviously, I think the last thing I would say is thank you, because at the end of the day, it's all about being grateful, because we have to be thankful for what we have in life. I've recently walked through a season of my life where I responded to one of the most stressful seasons of my life, pain, physical, emotional, spiritual, with this. This is how I responded. This was my response to the pain. I found the purpose inside of it, and I said, you know what? If I'm hurting, I bet other people are. And it's time to go from silly to serious, to everything in between. And what I chose to do here is I chose to create a community of the most unique group of dads that I've seen. So I've followed a ton of dad groups and all sorts of things, and I want to stay connected with those. But I want to create this group that's kind of different. So when I was growing up as a kid, there was only certain types of groups. You had your church groups, you had your non-church groups, you had your sports groups, they were all labeled by certain things. And I'm like, you know what? Why don't we create something where that label is kind of taken away, where it's really a team, where you have people who are coming together from all different walks of life, different experiences, good experiences with their own dad, bad experiences with their own dad, and everywhere in between, and who are choosing to be dad. We have to make a conscious choice of that. And so I think it's pretty cool. I really appreciate it. And like I said, this was my response to some of those most stressful times that I had in my life. And I think that's really where I want to focus in as we attack technology and hope it works for us. But as we end kind of talking here for the last 5 minutes, is this idea: how do we respond to the challenges in our life? And I think that's, Josh, where you have also responded in your way to the things that came your challenges, the things that could have gotten you down. Instead of getting down, you responded with this life coaching, this group. And so I would encourage all of our listeners, like, let's get a part of this. And the fact that it's a free group is something that I think sets you apart. And what you're trying to say is, hey, yeah, we can absolutely, you can pay me to help you, and that will help me and help my family. And honestly, people should want to pay someone to help them if they're going to put their time and effort into it. I don't know if anyone that doesn't do what you and I do realize how much time and effort this takes. But we know this. We could help at least one dad change the course of their life. It's worth it. And that's what's really cool. And so that's the first thing I would say, because there's not a lot of free communities out there to get involved in for dads. And I think that's a barrier to a lot of blessings in their lives. And I call those boomerang blessings, where like you don't necessarily look for the blessing, but it comes back to you because you're creating that space. So let me just say this, and then let's really unpack this idea. There are a lot of dads that you said are struggling alone. We don't all have the same struggle. Some of us are even addicted to good things. I stepped away from coaching this spring. It's the first time in 15 years, and I'm heartbroken about it. But I had to do it because I needed more time. What would you say to a dad like me who is trying to create more time with their kids daily and wants to feel better? What are one, two, or three things that I can do today to ensure that I don't backslide to where I was in terms of stress, anxiety, health, all of those things?
Yeah, I think again I go back to identity. Like at the end of the day, knowing who you want to become is going to help you every single day, and every single minute of every single day, and every decision that you make. Identity is definitely the number one thing I would say. Number two is having that identity tied to something that you always see. So, like for me, I have my watch on, and I have my phone, like my background. You probably can't see all the pictures here, but like this is like my identity, my like vision board, some people would call it. Um, but anytime, yeah, see, there you go. So it's like I have the background on my phone, which how many times do we get notifications on our phone every day? Your phone can tell you that. Actually, if you go to screen time, it'll tell you. It might scare a lot of people if you look at that. So maybe do it in a time when you're feeling level headed. But really anchoring in, and when I say anchoring, I mean like, okay, the idea of me leading, living, and loving with purpose and showing my kids how to do that. That's like tied to my watch. I wear my watch every single day, and so anytime I feel it like clank around, anytime I have a decision to make, anything, I feel that, and so I know that in everything I do, that's going to be my intention, and I remember it because of this. So if there's one thing that you could do today, like it's figuring out the type of dad that you want to be, and it's tying it into something that you can experience with your senses every single day. There's so much more that you can do. Like, I think energy and time wise, like the biggest things I've noticed is just like living a healthier lifestyle, like making sure you're getting in daily movement, making sure you're getting some high energy foods in, and making sure that you're really being intentional about your health. Because a lot of times we work, we drink coffee in the mornings, and by 8 o'clock at night when our kids are in bed, or even at 5 o'clock when like our kids are like we're getting home for the day and our kids are home and they want to play with you, we just want to like do this. We just want to like sit back. You want to like look at your phone, and the idea of like, hey dad, kind of like you said earlier, like, hey dad, like you don't want them to see dad like this all the time. Like you don't want to see them see you have to see you behind a screen. Like open up, just be there. And the way that you can do that is to get more energy. The way you can do that is by building these healthy habits and figuring out what it is for you, that you really want to be, tying it into something that you can experience with your senses every single day, and then just doing that in every single decision.
All right, so you heard from Josh there, tangible takeaways. That's one of my favorite things. As an elementary teacher, I talk about this all the time. You need
Yeah.
tangible takeaways for your students. And so let me just say this. What if we view ourselves as a student in these scenarios? I like to do that. I like to pretend I'm not the teacher. I'm a student. I'm a student of the game of life. And that's actually a theme behind a lot of the books that I write. If you start to look at yourself as a student or as an athlete and flip the role on yourself, you realize you don't have to be in charge of everything all the time. Yes, you are in charge of your choices. Yes, you're in charge of what you do with your time, but have some fun in your life and view yourself in a role that doesn't put all the pressure on you to succeed, but instead gives you the purpose of like striving for something. So that's the first thing I would say that I heard you say is that let's tangibly take away whether it's a watch, whether it's a hat, whether it's a physical thing. I talk about it all the time. Hang your worries in a bag and put them outside your house. Like if it has to be a real bag, go do it. Like I like seriously, like write it on
Yeah.
a note card, crumple it up, put it in the bag. Like just do it if that's what you have to do. Not everyone has to, but like that's pretty tangible. So make it as tangible as you need to. Second thing I hear you saying, and something that I've been working on recently, is just how can I incorporate just one more healthy meal a day? It's not about putting yourself in a box and being perfect with your food because that's hard for a lot of people, but just maybe one healthy meal, whether it's replacing your water intake with coconut water together, less coffee. You know what I mean? Like, could we balance these things better? Could we maybe not drink water a ton at one time? Can we drink it periodically throughout the day? Like, there's just little ways to utilize things maybe you're already doing and just make them a little bit more efficient. Or instead of having that, like you said, at 5 o'clock, that the last thing I would say is like instead of having that screen time, what I've actually done is I flip the phone around and I film myself doing fun trick shots with my kids. So like, yeah, I have the screen, I have that same need and desire, but like they're not seeing me as like not focused on them. Instead, they're seeing us having fun together. And it's pretty cool because then maybe they will start to view technology in a different way as well. It's not just something that takes you away from your family, but you can actually utilize it to become part of what you're doing. And that might not work for everybody, but what I would suggest is that you find a way to kind of mirror your technology into something that can benefit your family, lessen it, obviously, if you can, add a healthy meal or two in, spread your water intake out, and really maybe even measure that water intake out throughout the day. And then just importantly, like stop viewing yourself with so much pressure. Have a little bit more fun in your life because I think for me personally, anxiety comes the most when I feel the most pressure. And some of the pressure is just in my own head, honestly. And so if we can relieve some of that pressure in our own head and see the purpose and maybe even play, the purpose and play live together, I think we can be successful. That's actually how I run my gym when I teach phys ed, is if I can have purposeful play for kids, it's so much more meaningful than if I do too much of a structured game because they have more ownership when the play is purposeful. So why not look at life in the same exact way? All right, well, Josh, I want to hear like any ending thoughts that you have because I've enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, one thing I want to say is if you're a dad that's struggling, and maybe you've been struggling for years, and you like don't know where to look, you're being hard on yourself. I had to do this as well. You have to start with grace. Like, and Sean, you just said it too. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, the way you grew up is not the way that you have to continue to live. And maybe you grew up in a home where like you got yelled at when you did the wrong thing. And maybe you've carried that for so long. And now when you mess up or when you don't hit a workout that you're supposed to, or maybe you're like trying to hit like a personal record on bench press or something like whatever it might be for you, like or you're just trying to like run a 5K and you like hurt yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Give yourself grace. Dust yourself off. Find community that's going to support and hold you accountable for the things that you want in your life, and just start to live in this idea of grace. I think so many times we get caught up in the fact that like you said, we have to be perfect. We're the dad, we're the leader of the house. We have to make sure that 100% of the time we're focused in. And if we're not focused in 100% of the time, then we're focused in 0% of the time. And so give yourself grace, find the balance. Like it exists in your life, it's just finding it. And the way that you find that is through finding community, finding that support, finding that accountability.
I love that. And just to end here today, I put a short ebook on my stand store called Just an Anxious Dad. And it's just a PDF ebook. I have a whole bunch of them that are coming out as I prepare to release my Design to Compete and our picture book, The Emotional Shoes, that are going to be really awesome, published by Legacy Publishing. And it's really exciting. I'm publishing a bunch of little, just short, 50 to 60 page little PDF books because I think, Josh, your story, my story needs to be shared. And if people can read it, they have a better opportunity to relate with it and maybe feel like they're not alone. And inside the Just an Anxious Dad, just to end today, you actually quoted Bluey but Better, which is chapter 8. I talk about Bluey in that chapter, and he talks about getting up, dusting yourself off. And I think about the dad from Bluey, and I'm kind of sometimes jealous of that dad because I want to be more like him and how he plays with his kids. But also, what I like about that show is they don't They don't show the dad as perfect. Sometimes he gets upset in the show, and sometimes he like says silly things, and I'm like, okay, I feel you, dude. Like I think I just yelled at my kids, and I don't know why, and I'm really sorry. I mean, I've cried how many times telling my kids, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have yelled right there.
Yep.
But like at the end of the day, maybe they need to see me yell and see me be sorry for it because I can't be perfect. So that chapter is called Bluey but Better, and there's a lot of little fun ones. It also talks about my journey through anxiety and how that has shaped me, but also not shaken me to the point where I am not functioning, but also giving me strength to lean into others and to find other dads who are just a call away. So if you're listening to this podcast and you feel lost, you feel alone, just remember you're not. Every step you take, you've got a dad, you've got a friend that's just a call away. Thanks for listening in to our podcast today. Please find Josh. We'll make sure all of his links are on my Stand store as well as in the description for this podcast. And as always, make today the best version of that day.